And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all, depending on where you are logging in from today. See some folks from all around the world, which is always fun to see. As Oshie said, my name is Nicole Jerome, and I have the privilege of working here at York as a learning skills specialist as part of our Learning Skills Services office. So this morning, I would like to give you just a brief overview of our office and how we can help the student that you're supporting, and a little bit about what it means to be a learner within a university environment. The type of messaging your students are going to hear and things that they will be expected to learn about and to engage in throughout their time with us. So speaking of expectations of a university learner, they are expected to actively participate. So I have a participation question for you as well. So I am using an interactive software called Slido. And to get to the question, you can scan this QR code directly on the screen if you have a smartphone in hand or nearby, or you can go to any web browser, open up slido.com, SLIDO, and the join code is a learner. So our first question, is this your first time supporting a university learner? And a university learner at York University as well. We're seeing some yeses come in. Always fun to watch the answers go up and down as more folks join in. And if for any reason Slido was not cooperating with you today, feel free to add your response in the chat as well. Okay, so it looks like the majority of the room here, it is your first time supporting a university learner. So great to have that context, and we are extra glad you are joining us today and joining your student along in this journey as well. Now, I said that I work with learning skills services, but what does that mean? What sort of words, phrases, skills come to mind when you hear that term, learning skill? What might a learning skill be? Or an example of a learning skill? Active listening. You must have read Nona's presentation. I'm going to hear a little bit more about that. Communication skills, note-taking, yeah, academic reading and academic note-taking. Definitely really popular topics for students to come see us for. Taking responsibility, doing independent work, engaging in scholarly writing, yeah. Our colleagues in the Writing Center, here to help with that. Time management, yes. That is one of our other most popular topic. Studying, engaging in study groups, researching, yes. To use resources here, perhaps I see, to access a tutor. Writing a paper, being helpful, participating, yes, that active learning piece. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to keep going, but feel free to keep adding on to our word cloud. It will continue to populate as I move on. Note-taking, getting some more love here. Organization, yes. So this slide provides our contact information, which we'll also put our website in the chat for you, as well as an overview of the types of things your student can come see us for, as well as the different types of services we offer for them to engage with us. So as you alluded to in your answers, the academic skills that we're supporting are around that note-taking that you mentioned. You also talked about time management and study strategies. So there's a whole field of learning science out there about how our brain takes in, processes, and remembers information. So there are study strategies out there that work better than others as far as working alongside how our brains like to work and how we process information. There's also skills like giving a class presentation or working in a group. Test and exams, there's lots of different types of test and exams in the university environment. We're able to help support students to build knowledge and information in these areas, as well as their skills in executing these different strategies. And their confidence, not the lesser of the three. Often, a lot of our work is helping students to feel more confident in the skills that they are building. And so students can learn more about these topics by attending workshops, dropping into chat with one of our learning skills peer. We have a whole host of materials available online that can be accessed any time of day or night, as well as some certificate programming and special events. So while I work within Learning Skills Services, there are a whole host of academic supports at York, and we work really closely with these areas. So if a student comes to us who's not quite in the right area, we are very happy to connect them in with the service. So in addition to learning skills support, your students have access to libraries who help with some of that research writing citation pieces, the Writing Center around those academic scholarly writing skills, the ESL Open Learning Center around language skills, our Career Center, Health Ed and Promotion, who you're actually going to hear from next, our colleagues in SNAC, the most fun acronym on campus that always makes me hungry, who support with student numeracy skills, as well as Spark is an online resource that all of these different units have contributed to. As I said, learning skills is based on the science of learning. So our foundation is this fancy word, metacognition, which really means learning about learning, thinking about thinking. Okay. At the core of this is we are trying to help students not only learn the content in their courses, but also focus on the process, learning how to do the learning. So here we have the metacognitive cycle, which can help with this, give a bit of a more tangible idea to this concept. So in this cycle, we are assessing the task. Right? So what is it asking me to do? How long do I have to do it? Does it tell me citation style? So understanding the assignment, planning out your approach. How am I going to go about this particular assignment or study period or test prep? The application, actually putting your plan into action. Then we go over to the reflection piece. Really important. And this is an area that you can help support your student in. So taking that time to go back, did I understand the assignment properly? Did I implement my plan? Did what I planned work for this type of academic task? and then using that feedback going forward. So this could be in the middle of an assignment. Let's say you wrote an outline or first draft and then heading into the next, or this could be between courses even. Right? So when you get back that test or assignment, it's not over. We want to take that moment for that reflection and feedback and feed into this. Okay. So I am actually going to pause there. There's so much great information I would love to share with you about learning in a university environment. I'd like to pass the floor to my colleagues in health education to share some information around their department and their resources as well. And I'll be sticking around in the chat and happy to answer any questions as we carry on. And welcome again to York.
Thank you so much for passing it on to me. And I guess I'll start the next section of this little presentation that we have. So I am Nada, my pronouns are she and her, and I am one of the team leads here at Health Education and Promotion. And I'll give this time to Holly as well to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name's Holly. Nada will be leading our presentation today. However, I do want to introduce myself so I can be a familiar face to all our attendees this fall. I am the health promotion educator here at York, and I work alongside the peer health educators in delivering education, training, and increasing awareness in areas related to health and well-being. So welcome.
Yes, so welcome. I will add, I am a work study student, so for those of you parents who have your students coming in, know that that's also an opportunity for them, that they can work on their academics at the same time, work on building their professional skills here at York. So we'll start with just going a little bit over the agenda and what we're going to discuss today. The first thing is we're going to be talking about the wellness wheel, which is the approach that we like to take here in health education and promotion. Then we're going to discuss some of the mental health supports that York students have here. Those include things like individual counseling, group counseling, health education and promotion, as well as the public health nurses, which is a new addition to the team. But we'll start with the wellness wheel. So basically, this is a framework that we like to use in the way that we approach health. So mental health is not just about an individual's mind, but it also includes other factors as well. And we have to take a more holistic approach to health and wellness and look at the entire person, not just one aspect of their health. So as you can see here, there are 7 aspects highlighted on the wellness wheel. All are equally important. So there's emotional, social, financial, academic, environmental, spiritual, and physical. And each part is very much interconnected in a very complex way, but it's just having one aspect is not enough. We have to make sure that we're taking care of all aspects. So for example, we might find that it might be more difficult to manage our academic life if our emotional health is lacking a little bit. And basically the quality of our wellness is really just dependent on how we manage all these interconnected pieces together. So think of the wellness wheel sort of like a tire, and it's constantly rotating. But when one aspect of the wheel turns flat, then the entire wheel will then end up being affected as well. So for example, a common thing that we see is if someone's emotional well-being is poor, then that will likely affect other areas as well. So for example, their physical health, someone who might not be in the best emotional state might not really have the energy to cook nutritious foods or exercise as well. So that's just one of the many examples that we have. Okay, so student counseling, health and well-being is what we are a part of, and we wanted you folks to just get to know a little bit more about some of the things that we offer. So we offer a handful of resources to students in all programs and years, and we're going to go over what these are. And the first one is student counseling, health and well-being. So basically they provide services including individual counseling, group counseling, and workshops, which are also facilitated by clinicians who have experience working with a diverse student population. In addition to all these services, they are completely free of charge, so you don't have to worry about the whole budgeting thing. And for access and registration to those services, you can basically call the number on the screen, or you can visit the website that is also on the screen just to learn a little bit more about what we offer. But I'm gonna start with introducing individual counseling. So what we offer in individual counseling is, the first is walk-in counseling. And the service intends to basically provide students access to qualified counseling professionals in a safe and positive space. And its operating hours are usually Monday to Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then on Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And basically the focus on these sessions are centered around any issues that your student identifies and would like to work on with their counselor with. And basically the counselor and the student will both work to create an achievable plan towards their goals. And students are also welcome to express their preference to meet with counselors of a particular identity. So for example, whether that's gender or sexual orientation, race, or even ethnicity. So they just have to make sure that they express that with the receptionist before they enter their counseling appointment. Another thing that we offer is short-term counseling. So once the student speaks with the counselor for the first time, they then have the decision to either stop there or attend short-term counseling based on their current goals. So the service basically just provides support to help the student address any issues that may be affecting them at a specific time in their educational experience. And the sessions will be held either weekly or bi-weekly for approximately 15 minutes. And counselors will work with the student to create some goals and also plans to achieve them. And this may include creating a coping plan for in-between counseling sessions as well. And then if the student requires further support after their short-term counseling, then the counselor will connect them to a long-term counseling service that is also preferably free of charge as well. And then there's emergency support. So emergency support is provided 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. And to access the emergency support, students can call the number that is on the screen, or they can visit the website to see a little bit more about that. Anyways, examples of emergencies can include feeling highly suicidal or at risk of any of these feelings. If someone is thinking about hurting themselves or hurting someone else, that is an example of an emergency, or even a recent sexual or physical assault. And then there's a group counseling. So in addition to individual counseling, we offer group counseling as well. There are two main types of group counseling. There are process groups and support groups. So process groups are held weekly and are open to students. The group is led by CHW counselors. So the topics that they discuss change on a weekly basis and are more student-driven. So the students have basically an opportunity to obtain a little bit more psychoeducation and even provide their peers with mutual support and information and skills as well. And to see if a process group is the right fit, students must first be with a counselor for a walk-in session, and then the counselor will then refer them to the process group. The next one is support groups, and this is also led by counselors. And the aim is just to provide a safe space for students of a particular community or shared experience to reflect on topics that impact them the most. So examples of some of the support groups we have are two LGBTQIA+ support groups. We have gay men's support groups, queer women's support groups, racialized students, trans and non-binary students, and also support groups for survivors of sexual violence. And if students are interested in learning more, they can definitely visit our website. I will also add that these support groups process and support groups are not running in the summer, but they will be resuming in the fall, winter time. So to just keep update with that, just visit the website and you'll find everything there. And we do also occasionally have the mindfulness groups that focus on mindfulness meditation. And that would be subject to change throughout the year. So I would also recommend to keep up to date by looking at the website for more information on that. And the next one is health education and promotion, and that's us. That's what we do. So our main goal is basically to create proactive approaches to health and well-being on campus. So we offer a range of services, including training programs. We also offer workshops, and our workshops are usually in a hybrid model. So students have the option of viewing it online, or they can come to in-person workshops as well. And since we are transitioning back to in-person format, we also do peer-to-peer consulting, and we're also hosting more in-person events. So things that are just fun for students, things like yoga or painting sessions that kind of promote more of a community-based approach. And we educate in areas like mental health and well-being, physical health, nutrition, sleep, sexual health, alcohol, cannabis, and other drugs as well. If you do want to get more information, feel free to visit our website, which the link is on the screen for you, or you can even email our department as well. And the last piece is the public health nurses. So this is a new addition to our team. Ayan and Simran, who are public health nurses, are here to support just the overall health and well-being of students at York University. So if you visit the student health website, students can actually learn about a variety of health topics, from communicable diseases to primary care to sexual health and much, much more. So students can stay up to date on trending health topics on their blog posts, which they are currently developing, and students can reach out to them directly as well with their health-related question at the email that will show up on their website. And that's it for today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nada. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us this morning. Before we move on to our third and final guest speaker, I just want to open the floor up to all of you for any questions that you might have for the health education team or for the learning skills team before we let them go. I know there was a question in the chat earlier asking about if PDF and their slides can be provided. We will be emailing out the PDF presentation after the session is finished. So if anyone would like to revisit some of this information, you'll be able to find that there, as well as this session is recorded, and we will be posting it on our website earlier or later next week. Are there any other questions related to counseling, health education, or learning skills? Feel free to either pop it in the chat or unmute yourselves and ask it out loud.
I did want to add just one other resource that wasn't included on our slides. So we do have Keep Me Safe, and Keep Me Safe is a 24/7 support services that is available to York University. It is a free service that offers online resources, and you're able to connect to a mental health professional in any language. So that too is also available for all York University students. Thank you.
So there's one question in the chat, which reads, not sure where this fits in, but can you tell us more about Project Advance for those students that are associated with disability supports? I believe that's a question for Health Ed.
I can take that. So there is student accessibility services. It's not technically under us, but this is another department here at York. I'll try to pull up the website and paste it in the chat, and hopefully you can visit that and learn more over there.
It has actually been posted. Nona posted it in the chat for us. So if you're looking to find more information there, the link is there in the chat as well. Any additional questions? If not, feel free to always use the contact information that was provided in the slides if you want to either send an email or reach out to either of these teams, and they'd be more than happy to get back to you with information or answers to your questions that you might have. We're going to be moving on right now to our next presenter, which is Nona Robinson, who will be taking over. So I'll pass the floor over to you, and please all enjoy.
Great. Thank you, Shay, and hope everyone's doing well. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Nona Robinson. I'm the Vice-Provost Students. which is basically someone who's in charge of student services at York University very broadly. So I work with a whole range of different services, as well as closely with student leaders, faculty, staff and other departments, really to try and craft as many strong supports for students as possible. I've been at York for 10 months now. I came to York from Trent University, where I was for 10 years. And before that, I was at the University of Toronto. So great choice to come to York for your students. I'm really loving it. And you know, there's so many different things to offer at York, and hopefully your student is going to have a really wonderful time. I'm going to just very quickly put up my slide deck, but I believe it's been sent out to people. So if you've got it, if you've got two screens, feel free to follow along. But I prefer to actually be visible to people. So I'm just going to pull it up while I've got a couple of things to show you. Let's just do that. Just confirming, O'Shea, is that come up properly?
It's just loading. So we can see it now. You just need to put it into presenter view.
Super, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to be talking in a session about what some common anxieties are that students, but also families have prior to coming to university and during university. What is involved with that sort of transition for you and for your student, because it's a big transition for your student, but it's also going to change things for you as well. We really like to focus on what students' strengths are rather than sort of assuming that they're going to be struggling. What are some of the things that are going to help them to be successful? What happens when they run into challenges, and you know, what sort of resources and referrals there are. Things that you can be talking to your student about, and also when things go wrong. We'll also be doing a quick little role play. Elizabeth, who's one of our students, has volunteered to pretend to be my daughter, and we will, you know, be showing the, you know, overbearing parent versus the coaching parent, because you know, that's something that I think that can be actually quite helpful to see, especially when your student is not home or is becoming more independent, how you can sort of encourage them to take responsibility for their own you know, decisions and development and all those other good things. I will be talking a little bit about some slightly difficult things, and in fact some fairly difficult things. So I just wanted to note that, and if you didn't get a copy of the slide deck, please feel free to email me. So thinking about common family anxieties, please put in the chat what it is that you're a bit worried about for your student, and for what's going to be coming up for them. You know, family members are worried sometimes that their student will grow away from them, or that they won't like university, or they won't like their courses, or they won't do well academically. Sometimes they're concerned that students will be isolated and won't make friends, or that they'll make too many friends and spend all their time socializing and not going to class. And of course, we all worry that bad things might happen. And you know, we see news headlines all the time about what's happening for this particular age group, and that you know, we will worry that sort of thing can happen to students. And this is why we want to try and identify and address issues really early on before anything escalates. And, you know, because this is a time when students do tend to learn, grow, develop, change, sometimes we worry that they will change so far that we're sort of like, wait a second, what happened? You know, you went away to university and now you're doing some and acting completely differently. So what's happened with that? Because I think that often university is a time for folks to really explore what their identity is, what their goals are, all of those sorts of things. And sometimes those will change quite a bit. I'm not seeing much by way of chat, but hopefully that covered some of your anxieties. But again, feel free to add in there in them if anything comes up. I also want to talk a little bit about transition theory. So we've all gone through many transitions, you know, finding a new job, moving out from home, moving to a new house, getting married, sometimes getting divorced, you know, having kids, a long list of different things that have been major life changes for us. For many of our students, you know, coming to university is going to be the very first transition they're managing primarily on their own. So things that contribute to successful transitions include the amount of support that they feel that they have externally, and that's certainly where you come in. It's also where we come in. But also what sort of internal resources they have. And we sometimes talk about resiliency or grit or any of those sorts of things. I don't necessarily like to rely solely on internal resources for people because people bring different things at different times. But if students have gone through other transitions before and they have a sense of how to manage it, that can actually be very helpful. So as an example, if I'm about to move houses or something like that, I start to make a long list. I do pro-con lists and various things like that. And I write it all down and I never look at it again. It's the act of writing it down that really helps me to sort of figure out what some priorities are and how to manage all the things that need to be done. And that's just my coping strategy. But I learned that after I'd already done several major transitions and had to move numerous times and, had various disasters as they came up. So the other thing that can make a big difference for students is feeling that they have a sense of control, that they have an understanding about what the situation is and what they can do to address it, either positive or negative. So unanticipated versus anticipated makes a big difference as well. Your student's been thinking about going to university for a very long time at this point, so they're anticipating a whole bunch of things. Sometimes they might be anticipating things that don't actually materialize, again, positive or negative. So when those expectations aren't met, that can be a little bit disorienting for them. So again, focusing on what sorts of things that your student can bring to their transition can be really, really helpful for them. And I'm going to take that down because that way we can see each other a bit better. So any questions about any of that so far? I see academic challenges, fear of how to cope with the outside world, not knowing how to deal with situations. Yes, that's certainly confident going in and having academic struggle, bad test grade for losing control, absolutely. How to connect with fellow parents to share detailed ideas and best practices. Actually, that's a really great idea. We'll look into that, finding a platform for parents to share resources and ideas. Those anxieties that people have put in are totally understandable. And I will say, it's interesting because we've had several years of pandemic learning. So students hopefully have been back to school for a year or two at this point, but had a significant educational interruption, which I think has also, for many students, affected socialization as well, and a sense of confidence and sort of an ability to sort of hearing about going into the outside world. That can make a big difference. But when it comes right down to it, one of the things that I sort of remember and have to remind myself about, and I'm reminding faculty about it as well, there are many aspects of the pandemic that were incredibly stressful for students. Many of them also picked up some really valuable skills that their predecessors didn't have, including things like self-efficacy, time management, because they had to be very self-driven and motivated to go get onto Zoom classes and to get deadlines done on time versus sitting in a classroom and having someone standing over them and making sure they did their homework. So I think, in that respect, students having had to go through that, are bringing in some additional strengths. And again, that's something for us to remember. I think when we're thinking about what students need to know in order to be successful, and this was somewhat covered in the wellness presentation when we were talking about the wellness wheel, it's not just about academic skills, it's also life skills. The sort of joke about bringing home laundry and not knowing how to separate whites and colors and all those other sorts of things. But it's more than that. How do you walk up to a group of people and introduce yourself and have that confidence? How are you managing financially? Many of our students, are going to be taking out student loans or, have to really scrape together the money to come to university. We recognize that university is very expensive, including the cost of living. So managing financially is going to be something that your students learning and managing. Physical and mental health, we talked about a little bit already. Both are very important. We tend to focus these days on mental health because, again, I think it's very positive that mental health issues have been destigmatized as much as they have. But we also know that students are coming in, and again, pandemic did not help with this, with pre-existing mental health issues, and that sometimes in university, especially with the 18 to 24-year-old age group, that's often when mental health issues start to manifest themselves. But physical health makes a big difference as well. And sometimes people joke about the freshman 15 and things like that because people go away from home or away from home for a big part of the day. And are not necessarily eating healthily, they're not exercising as much. So encouraging your student to keep an eye out on that is really valuable as well. Family members also worry about risk taking. So whether it's partying, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's risk taking in terms of what sort of classes they're taking, any of those sorts of things, it's family members' job to worry. But if we start to worry too much, then that starts to put a bit of a barrier between us and the student, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Because really what we want to be doing is encouraging independence and autonomy because in effect, especially for first year, that's the transition year for students for students coming directly out of high school from being, living, not independently with you and living more independently by themselves or with friends somewhere off campus, or even if they're continuing to live at home, having much more independence in terms of what they're doing. So, it is a big shift, and it's a big shift for you as well. So what I'd like you to do is think about what your student is good at. Because as I mentioned, it's easy for us to sort of think, oh, that long list of different catastrophic things that could happen. But every student brings their own strengths. And some students, it might be that they are very good at time management. Another person might have really great social skills. Another person might have really amazing ability to, meet deadlines and to plan out what their workload is going to be. Another person might just be able to just sort of write beautifully and fluently and easily, and that's going to just endear them to faculty members because they're going to write beautiful essays. So thinking about those strengths, ideally think about 3 at least, and think about, and this is your chance to boast about your student. Please put at least one of those strengths in the chat, and so that we can hear from you what you think your students are good at. One comment: resilience. That's very valuable. Excellent. Organization. Also excellent. Creative, making friends, meeting deadlines. 2 strengths, even better. Independence. So as you can see, there's a wide range of different strengths, and people will bring different strengths to their academics. The reason I'm mentioning this is because sometimes when a student is talking about the problems that they're having, if you know that they're very good with, for example, meeting deadlines, then that's something that maybe they can take from their academics to apply to other parts of their lives. If they're good at socializing or making friends, then maybe you're struggling with their academics, maybe it would be helpful for them to talk to some friends or to meet some people in their class and form a study group. And online tools make it even easier to do that. You don't even have to get together physically. So leveraging these really great strengths into other areas can be really, really valuable for your student in order to be successful. When we're thinking about all those different areas that students need to be successful, that can really help. And again, it's helpful for us to remember what those strengths are, because our first inclination is going to be to jump in and solve problems for people. But if they're able to learn to solve those problems themselves using some of those strengths, that can be really valuable as well. I remember at one point having done the session or a similar session at other universities, seeing a parent at convocation who talked about this, and another one of our orientation leaders at Trent told me that their parent had written down those strengths and put them in his wallet, so as to be able to remind himself all the time about what she was good at. She thought it was a little bit strange, but she really appreciated it because it was very affirming for her as well. So that is something, again, to remember, is especially when you see your students struggling, that they have a lot of strengths that they're going to be bringing to their academics and to their university life. We're going to do that role play that I was talking about. We're going to pretend the first one is going to be not great. It's going to be a very overbearing parent. And then the second one is going to be more coaching. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth to join us. And we're going to pretend that we're Zooming. She's in residence. She's in school, in classes, and I'm Zooming to check in on her. And so Elizabeth, are you there?
Hi, Nona. Yes, I am.
Great. Okay, so role play. Elizabeth, hello. Are you
Hey,
on
Mom. Yeah, I am.
Right. There. Oh, good. Your picture wasn't coming up there, so that was making me a little bit worried. So I haven't heard from you for the last 24 hours. What's going on?
Not much, just the school. Been hanging with some friends. Yeah.
Hanging with friends. You're going to class though, right?
Sometimes, I mean, it's whatever, really. I would much rather like be with my friends than like going to like class and sitting in lectures for like God knows how long.
Well, that's just not acceptable. We talked about this. Every time you miss a class, that's like $85 worth of tuition that you're just throwing out the window. I know. And I know I'm checking your schedule right now. And you had biology and chemistry. Did you miss both of those classes?
Yeah, so.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, this is very, very much a problem. I don't think that we can continue this way. I agreed to have you live in residence, but you said you would be responsible, and you're not being responsible. So
I'm doing my best. Like it's not like I missed every single one of them. It was just like a few, and yeah, I'm doing my best. You like told me to like meet new people, make some friends, and like that's what I'm doing. So like I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, the problem is that your friends are interfering with your academics. And you're not. I mean, yes, meet friends and enjoy yourself, but the main thing for you is to be studying hard so that you can get into medical school, like I want you to.
Well, that's what you want.
If you're not studying hard, then you're not going to get into medical school.
I already told you I'm doing the best that I can. Like there's only so much I can do, and I don't want to be stuck in like just like doing schoolwork like 24/7. Like I'm a grown adult now. I get to like make my own like decisions, and I already told you like I'm doing the best that I can.
You start paying for it. And we're contributing to your university education, and the fact is you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I don't think residence is the right place for you right now. So I think what I'm going to have to do is bring you home. We'll have you commuting, but I need to make sure that you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing in terms of going to classes and studying. So I think I'll probably come and collect you on Friday. Is that all right?
I mean, sure. Can I like? Is there anything that I could do about it? Like you already made up your mind, so.
Well, right now I don't have confidence in you. How do you think you can get my confidence back when you're not going to class? I'm going to come and pick you up. We'll talk about it on the weekend, and we'll come up with a new plan. And what I'll probably be doing is just checking and making sure you're going to class. So what I'll do is I'll text you before each class. But in the meantime, I think it's time that we had a good sit down talk, because obviously things are going not very well. And when it comes right down to it, I need you to be successful. So I'll see you on Friday. Make sure you have your stuff.
See you then.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so that's not what you're supposed to be doing. What are some things that, and again, put that in the chat, that you noticed me doing where you're sort of like, oh, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, please don't do that. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, Elizabeth, how did that feel?
I felt like I wasn't really being listened to. Like we were having a conversation, but it really felt like just one-sided, and almost like as if I was talking to a wall, like not really being like understood. And like I was trying to like explain what was going on in my life to the best of my ability, and like I shared that like I was really just doing my best like academically, and even like socially, right? Like trying to make new friends, meeting new people, to have that like balance in my life. And still like I didn't feel like I was being listened to, and that I wasn't like being understood by my mom, who is like supposed to like be there, like supporting me and like backing me up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was sort of talking to you as though you were 5.
That's
Did anyone notice anything else that I was doing? Feel free to put it in the chat. But I think I interrupted you at least once, if not more. And I was very much telling you what to do. I also told you that you were going to medical school. Do we have a sense that you want to go to medical school? Not necessarily. Displayed my own anxiety. Absolutely. I was reaching out for as much control as possible. And that was a bit of a problem. Thanks, Jocelyn. Okay, let's try this one again. All right. C. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Mom.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Feel better.
Oh yeah? What's going on?
I mean, I don't know, there's just a lot that has been like going on lately with school and friends and everything. Yeah, I just kind of been having like a hard time balancing the two.
Okay. What are some of the things that you're finding are a problem?
I mean, just last week I failed my midterm, and like I had never like failed like any like test or like examination for that matter, like in high school. Like I was pretty much like straight A student. So I don't know, I've kind of been feeling like down since then. Not really having like much energy to like hang out with like friends or even to like study for that matter.
Yeah, that sounds really difficult. And that must be really hard for you, because I know how important getting good grades is for you.
Yeah, for sure. And like I mean, I know that you want me to go into like med school, so I'm really trying my best, and to like fail this like midterm is in like my first year. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you don't get into medical school, that's totally up to you. I know that you talked about wanting to be a doctor at some point, but this is your time to explore new things. But I am concerned for you that you're obviously feeling really down, and it sounds like you're having difficulty feeling motivated right now. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right. Like, yeah, ever since that happened, like I've just found out how like hard, like I don't like really want to like do much like study or like even like be with friends. Like like a couple of them have reached out, but I don't really feel like motivated to like even like talk to them. You're like the first one that I've really like shared this with. So I really like appreciate you like listening. And I mean, I think it's great that you said that about like med school, because like I hadn't told you this before, but like now I'm really just like doing this for you and for that. Like I don't really want to go into like med school that much anymore. So yeah.
Well, I don't want you to have to feel like you have to do it for me and Dad. And certainly we can talk more about what sorts of things you might be interested in doing instead. But what I'm hearing is that you're isolating yourself a bit, and both in terms of academics, but also in terms of your friends. Do you know what led to you not doing well on that midterm?
Um, I mean, I think it might have just been like trying to again like balance all of my courses. Usually I would start like studying like weeks in advance, right? Like when I was like back in high school, and I would like make my notes and really felt like I had like a lot more time to go over them. Whereas now I really like only started reviewing them a few days prior. Um, which is not ideal, I know, but I just couldn't find the time to start any sooner.
So it sounds like figuring out your schedule and managing your time is being quite challenging for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like I don't feel like I have like much time to like do anything. Like I've also having like been like as physically active as I was like back in high school. Like I feel like I'm just like stuck in like the lecture halls and don't really have like much time to like do anything else. Yeah, like even like having like time to like eat, like I'm trying to like juggle like all of it, and it feels like, yeah, everything might like come like crashing down. But yeah, I'm just like doing my best. It's just like difficult like transitioning into university. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you thought about talking to anyone about this?
I have, but I'm not sure who to go to. It feels like a lot of the time like I'm alone, and I know there's people that I can talk to, but I just don't know where to start.
Because it sounds like you're dealing with a bunch of different things. And, I remember going to a session during the summertime, and there's a lot of different resources that are available. And that might be because you don't know where to start because there's so many different resources. But I do remember hearing that in residence, you have residence dons. Have you talked to your don about any of this?
I saw him during orientation, but I haven't really talked to him, or yeah.
Okay. Does he seem like someone who you'd feel comfortable talking to?
Yeah, I guess so. He seemed very like approachable and nice.
Okay, so that's an option. The other thing is, if you're okay with this, what I can do is go back and look at what some of the other resources are, because I remember hearing that, for example, counseling has drop-ins, there's academic advising, there's various things like that. But I think it sounds to me like what would be really helpful for you is figuring out some ways to better manage all the things that you're trying to juggle. And then maybe that would give you more of a sense of control over what's happening. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks so much. I could really use like those resources and really know like where to go, how to find them, who to talk to.
Yeah. I also remember hearing that a really good thing to think about is, what do you absolutely need to get done in the next 24 hours and in the next 48 hours? And can you prioritize those? And then worry about some of the other stuff a little bit later on. Is that something that might be helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great place to start.
Right. Are you still going to class?
I am. I skipped a couple just because I was feeling like very like stressed and overwhelmed. But I already reached out to a friend in that class if they could like share the notes, and they did. So I will be catching up on that.
Good. Yeah, because if you're just sitting in your room feeling tense, which I can understand because I know how important this is to you, that might just make things a little bit worse for you. So I'm hoping that you can keep getting out and going to class and spending a bit of time with other people. But
I will, yeah, I will start going again.
Yeah. Let me start looking into some of those resources, and when would be helpful for you to talk again with me?
Probably Wednesday afternoon. I only have class in the morning on Wednesday, so yeah, the afternoon works.
Great. Okay, so I'll send you a text with some links, and then we'll get in touch on Wednesday afternoon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mom.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye. Say hi to everyone for me.
I will. Okay, and scene. So again, in the chat, please feel free to share what some of the differences are that you saw between the first and second role play in terms of what I did. And Elizabeth, what did you notice that I was doing differently?
Simply the tone of your voice. It was more like calmer and soothing, and you were not interrupting me. You were like suggesting and like giving advice, but you were not like inputting what you wanted into like my life. Yeah, like you were listening and like asking like follow-up questions that might provide you with like more information of like what might be the issue. You were really looking for the root problem, and not just like looking at the surface. of the problem, which would just be like, oh, like I skipped class. You really like went in and asked like, oh, was there like a particular reason why that happened? And that's when I feel like comfortable enough to like share with you why I hadn't been going to class.
Yeah. So that active listening is actually really helpful for encouraging your student to share, to feel confident in sharing information. You know, if the student's worried about your reaction, then they're probably not going to feel that they can really share as much. And thanks, Jocelyn. Yes, giving the student ways to exit her difficult situation through affirmation. I tried also to hold off on the advice and the, you know, you should go talk to counseling, any of those sorts of things. And as much as possible, helping Elizabeth to identify what the key problems were before jumping to the solutions. Because, you know, it came down to things like not feeling in control of her schedule or her time, and feeling isolated and alone. Some of the other things, sometimes it's helpful for students to hear that lots of students struggle with this sort of stuff. Sometimes it's not, because, you know, everybody feels like their situation is unique, because it is. But, you know, even just acknowledging that university can be more difficult sometimes, but let's talk about some strategies. So yes, and calm is good. So sometimes we have to do a bit of poker face around the but you know, that sort of calm, supportive tone of voice, again, especially if you're doing it online, but even in person, can make a really big difference. And just, you know, open body language and nodding and prompting. So that is, in fact, active listening. Those open-ended questions. Talk to me about what happened. You know, what are some things that you've tried so far? All of those things are really helpful questions to ask. Because I will deal with students who are in significant distress, and staff as well. In my back pocket, I have some of these phrases, because if I'm sitting there going, "Ooh, geez, I have no idea what to say," which sometimes happens, even though I do like giving advice, it's very helpful to, you know, be able to sort of say something like that. That's hard. Talk to me about a little bit more about it. You know, what happened next? You know, what have you tried so far? All of those are really great phrases to use. My tendency, which I've had to learn not to do, is to jump right in with advice, and to sort of say, oh, you've got X problem, here's Y solution. So you're having problems with time management, you should go talk to learning skills. You're having problems with your partner, you should go talk to counseling. All of those sorts of things. But the problem with that is that that's then my solution, not the student's solution. So, you know, finding out from them what will work for them makes it much more likely that they'll follow through. And I'm just looking at the chat. International students and motivating and supporting them. We have an entire department of York, called York International, which works very closely with international students, including, you know, direct support, but also things like, you know, making sure that they're accessing the other supports that they need. And students who are fully independent and lack the usual parental involvement. Fully independent is actually pretty good. And the reality is, you know, as students become more fully independent, they're also more likely to realize when they need to actually get support or need help. And I say this as someone who really does not like asking for help, because it sort of implies to me like I am not successful. So again, I had to learn this. But you know, if your student is living by themselves, for example, or living you know, outside of residence at an apartment or something like that, and managing their own money and all of those sorts of things, the second role play, the approach that I was using, actually works quite well in terms of coaching. Because then it's not so much that you're telling them what to do, that you have control. Like the first role play, I was swooping in and taking her home, which again, not really the best solution. But being able to help coach students to find their own solutions can make an enormous difference. Because regardless of how independent any of us is, it's often very helpful to talk to friends or partners or families about, you know, some of the difficulties that we're having, even if it's just an opportunity to vent and to get some support that way. I think sometimes in terms of coaching, I did say also, have you talked to anyone about this? And one of the things that Elizabeth said was, you're the first person I told about this. Students often will invest a great deal into their own self-esteem, so that if they don't do as well as they're hoping to, that's a real blow to their self-esteem. And it's really hard to deal with. And it's hard sometimes to share, because it's almost as though it's a pride issue. If I talk to people about this, then again, I may have failed, or I'm not doing as well as I wanted to. I'm not doing as well as my parents want me to, all of those sorts of things. So again, helping students to see that, talking to people and getting support for stuff is actually very helpful. And I know that, and we've seen plenty of research on this, the students who are most successful are the ones who get help in September. So, even someone who's doing extremely well, we see people going to get writing assistance, they might be getting like 85 and want to get 90. And so they go and they get writing assistance just to help out, to be able to do better, and to do better according to what they want to achieve. So, and if you get help in September versus December, September, the problem's still fairly small and it's manageable, and we can work with the student to fix it. By December, often problems have escalated and multiplied, and that's close to the end of the term, close to final exams. At that point, recovering if your classes aren't going well is going to be much, much more difficult. So we really strongly encourage students to find out what the resources are as early as possible, and to think about what they might need to be successful, and to go out and get access to those resources. And I encourage that, knowing that in many cases, those resources are waiting for that influx of students who are really struggling, but that tends to happen starting more in October and November. So in September, it's actually quite easy to get in to talk to people right away. It's also helpful to think about what you should be talking to your student about in advance of them coming to university. And part of it is also helping to make sure that they're familiar with all the resources, so that they've thought through, okay, well, if I'm not doing as well academically as I want to, there is learning skills, and there are academic advisors, and there are people that I can talk to get support with that. If your student's living in residence, the residence dons get 2 weeks of training on all of these sorts of things. If they're not living in residence, all of the services, including the colleges and various other sorts of things, we're trying to populate as many people all around the campus, both campuses, to try and ensure that no matter who your student talks to, they'll have a pretty good idea of how to support them. And so that could be a faculty member, that could be the department. There's a whole long list of different people. In the slide deck that you've hopefully gotten, in the appendix is basically by category a list of all the different resources that York has. So it's good for you to talk with your student about that and about how they will seek help. And I see in the chat, the bigger concerns, not seeing September or the intervention is a good idea. That's again where, having that conversation this summer, what happens, like, what do you expect your grades to look like? And what happens if your first midterm or something like that is not as good? What do you think you want to do about that? What are some ways that you can set yourself up to be successful, so that your students be thinking about that as well? And we've got a range of different summer activities as well as fall orientation, also focused for your student to learn about these things. Finance is another big area. So some students are going to have financial support. Some students will get financial aid. Some students might burn through a fair bit of money, and then how are you going to be able to help them if they run out of money? Are there some, what's your upper limit? Does your student know how to budget? Do they have an idea of how much to spend every week? If all of that is all set up, that's fabulous. But we're not trained to talk about money, and so that can be an awkward conversation. But along the lines of what happens in October, November, if you're really short of cash, what are some things that we can talk about then? How are you going to come and tell us about that? If your student's still living at home, are the rules going to change? What happens if they want to stay out late? What happens if they want to stay out overnight? What are your expectations in terms of them doing chores and household tasks? If they have younger siblings, how's that going to change the relationship? Those are good conversations to have. If they're moving into residence or moving into an apartment, what's your expectation in terms of how often you'll be communicating? Are they bringing their laundry home to do? Those, again, good conversations to have with your student in advance, because if you wait to have them till things start to go south, often it's harder to be calm about some of those things, especially if they show up with 3 loads of laundry and expect you to do it, which I'll do. I mentioned communication frequency. These days, when I started university, which was a very long time ago, before emails and internet and texting, all those sorts of things, my mother lived in Africa. That's where I went to high school. We wrote letters on paper with stamps, which got mailed, and it took 2 weeks to get to Zimbabwe. And it took 2 weeks for her reply to get back to me. And at that point, a month had gone by. Whatever it was that I was doing was way too late for her to get any sort of intervention into. So, you know, these days, everything is very, very immediate. And I think that also leads us sometimes to feeling like we have to be on top of every single little thing that's going on in our students' lives. And I think there's a lot of pressure on parents to do that. And there has been pressure while the students are growing up. So, you know, being able to move away from that a little bit and being comfortable with not communicating all the time and not texting all the time. Although I remember at one point I was doing one of these sessions in person, and, you know, a parent stuck up her hand and said, yeah, you know what, my daughter just texted me. So she's texting me all the time. It's not me that's texting her. So again, it's one of those things that, you know, it depends on where it's coming from. But having a regular check-in time is a really valuable thing, because then you can both be focused on, you know, actually talking about how things are going, and you sharing about how things are going with you as well. And if you are concerned about your student, how is it helpful for them? Like, what sort of phrasing is helpful for them? So if you say to them now, you know, in September when you start school, and if I start to get worried about something, what would be helpful for you? What would be a helpful way for me to ask you about it? You know, and hear what they say. I had a student at one point say to me, and this was a bit heartbreaking, because we were talking, and I said, you know, do you have family support? And she's like, I would have family support, but my parents worry about me so much that if I talk to them about this, then they're going to get really worried, and I don't want them to be. And, you know, I'm sort of like in my head going, but if you crash and burn, they're going to worry even more. So, you know, hopefully they can open up, and you can share that, and ended up we're talking and coaching the student around literally saying to her parents, you know, this is stopping me from feeling comfortable talking to you. So I know you worry about me, but can we put that on the back burner so that we can have a conversation about what's going on, because I don't want to distress you. So absolutely, it's, as I said, it's our job to worry, but if our students are managing our emotions around that, then it makes it much more difficult for them to share. Longer term, you know, what are your students' goals? Elizabeth and I were doing a little back and forth about medical school. A lot of students will come in and you know, at age 17, 18, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go to medical school. I went into biochemistry, hated it, discovered I hated it, switched to history. You know, it was a very big career change for me, and, you know, worked out fine. But, you know, I was discovering that this was not something that I really wanted to be doing. This may or may not happen with your student as well, because 17 or 18 is very young to be deciding what your entire life trajectory is going to be. And the other thing to keep in mind is you know, unlike previous generations, this generation of students will actively probably change full-on careers 5, 6, 7 times, not just jobs, but careers. The career market and labor market changes and evolves very, very quickly these days. So learning that adaptability, learning those transferable skills, all of those things are really, really valuable. Encouraging your student to talk to our career services earlier rather than later can also be really helpful, because that will, especially if they're thinking, you know what, I'm not sure if this is exactly what I want to be doing. I thought it was, but I'm not sure. The career services folks can really help talk through with them what it is that they love doing, what some different career options are, and hopefully match them to some goals that are going to really serve them well. Because students get really well motivated if they're in classes and if they're in areas where they actually think, you know what, I really like this. I can see doing this. I'm getting a lot out of this. If they're really forcing themselves to go to those classes, and sometimes there will be classes that they have to take as part of their degree program, they're sort of like, you know, I don't really like it. But if they're just miserable in their academic degree area, then that's a good time to explore what some alternatives are, rather than just sort of saying, that's it, I have no interest in this. That could make it, again, a really big difference, and our career services are going to helpful for that. So taking that step back a little bit, encouraging them to explore what some options are, some future directions. We all have our dreams for our students, but being able to sort of say, one of the dreams is that you are happy in your life and in your chosen career, and so whatever it takes to help you get there, that's going to be beneficial. That can be really really valuable, because there's a lot of pressure on students these days to pick a career, to pick a degree, and to just power on through it without necessarily taking that sort of bigger picture view as to whether or not this is something that will really suit them. So if you're starting to worry, doing that coaching about what it is that you can do to help students to manage things better. Sometimes it might be that you need to intervene, but as much as possible, encouraging them to come up with their own solutions, because as I said, that's where they're much more likely to follow through on it. And then also, being aware of yourself of what the resources are. And that's why the slide deck has all those resources, so that, if your student's sitting there going, I have no idea what to do next, or I'm really struggling with this, you have that at your fingertips, that these resources exist. And you can say, is this something that might be helpful for you? Our website, our current students website, has lots of information about all of these different things, as well as links. So that's a good starting point if you're just like, I'm not really sure where to start. And if you are worried, contact us. We are here to help you as well as your students, because you are in many ways going to be your students' primary support system. And if you feel supported by us, that will make it easier for you to support your student. Privacy legislation says I'm not going to be able to talk to you about your students' individual cases, but lots of times family members will say, you know what, my student's dealing with this and this and this and this, and I just don't know what to do. And then we can talk through, what some options are for your student, what some resources are, even what some ways are of approaching the situation for you. We're there for you as well. And the reality is, your friends or your students will turn to their friends. They'll turn to you. They'll even turn to the internet before they actually show up at one of our services. So as far as I'm concerned, the better informed you are of all of the different things that are available for your student, the more likely it is we'll be able to connect with them early on, as one of you noted in the chat, so that problems stay small and manageable versus escalating. I've got a couple more things in the chat I saw. Yeah, so Sabine was talking about privacy information, pretty much. Yes, as I said, legally can't share that information, but I'm more than happy to talk through what some approaches are. And then the other thing is, if you're worried about your student and you want us to check in on them, especially if they're living in residence, but even if you want us to reach out to them, we can do so. Again, we won't necessarily be able to tell you what the result is, but we can certainly say, if you flagged, I'm worried about my child, can you try and get in touch with them? Then we'll definitely do that, because we want your student to be safe as well. We have talked about some of the more challenging things that your student might encounter, and that does include some things that are potentially even quite devastating and difficult. My wish is that this does not happen for your student. We do a lot of preventative work, including things like training around bystander intervention, identifying when students are struggling, making sure students know about consent in any kind of sexual relationship, all of those sorts of things. So we really want to do as much as we can to help educate your student, to make sure that they know how to manage these situations so that they don't turn bad. But it is possible that bad things will happen. And again, that's why we're here. We really want to be there to make sure that your student is well supported through that. And we also take that approach of encouraging resilience and finding out strategies to help them to cope with whatever issue it is that they're dealing with. With that said, for the vast majority of students, university is a wonderful time. Challenging on some occasions, occasional hiccups, but generally speaking, wonderful. A lot of students learn and grow and really find themselves, find out what it is they want to do in the future. They become independent, they become resilient, self-reliant, they get excited about what they're doing. They develop a whole range of wonderful skills, both academic and career-oriented, and also non-academic. And you're watching them and going, I'm so very proud of you. And I say this as someone, because we just had our convocation ceremonies a couple of weeks ago, and I went to as many as I could, and people are like, oh, that's a lot of convocations. York is a big place. There were a lot of convocations. So this is graduation. And the reason I go to all of those is because it's such joy. It's joy for the students. They're walking across the stage, they're getting their degree. It's so exciting. And for the family members in the audience, everyone's just so very proud. So my wish and hope for you again in 4 or 5 years is that I see you again in that audience, and that you are equally proud of the achievements that your student has made.